Hello, Senators. I'm going to read the Student Government Constitution. Preamble. We, the students of the University of Texas at Tyler, hereby recognize the Student Government Association as the forum of student opinion. The SGA shall operate within the laws of the state of Texas and the rules and regulations of the Board of Regents of the University of Texas at Tyler. The SGA shall assist the university with identifying the interests, programs, goals, and majority of students, communicate to the university community those interests, programs, and goals of students, and assist the university in providing students with programs to meet students' needs. Article 1. Membership and eligibility. All students enrolled at the University of Texas at Tyler, as so defined by the Office of Registrar, shall be eligible to participate in the SGA except as noted herein. All members of the student body not on scholastic or disciplinary probation, as or recorded by the offices of the Registrar and Judicial Affairs, shall be eligible to campaign for and hold elective office within the SGA, with the exception of the executive officers and executive officer candidates, who must also have the minimum a cumulative grade point average of 2.75 or above. In order to file and campaign for an officer position, a student must have previously served at least 6 academic weeks from their swear-in date as either a senator or officer for the SGA. In order to file and campaign for an elected office, a student must be registered as a full-time student as so defined by the Office of the Registrar. In order to hold an elective office, each student must maintain his or her full-time status unless the office or holder is within 11 hours of graduation during the last semester of their current term. Graduate students must maintain their full-time status unless they are within 8 hours of graduation during the last semester of their current term. This is an exception to Article 1, Section 4 of this Constitution. No member shall be denied full and equal opportunities in the SGA based on race, religion, sex, color, creed, disability, age, sexual orientation, national and or ethnic origin. The rights and privileges of the members of the SGA shall be: A. The right to vote in all SGA elections for which they are eligible. B. The opportunity to participate in all organizations, committees, activities, and programs for which they are eligible. And C. The opportunity to run for and to hold elected positions in the SGA, providing all requirements for that position are met. Article 2. Executive Branch. Executive Board. Executive power within the SGA shall be vested in the President, the Vice President, the Secretary, the Treasurer, and the Parliamentarian. The executive officers shall receive financial compensation at an amount determined by the Chief Student Affairs Officer. Officers shall serve one term beginning on May 1st and ending on April 30th. All elected officers must serve the entirety of their term unless removed from the office due to violation of the SGA absence policy or in compliance with Article 3, Section 3.11.d of this Constitution. Executive officers shall hold office hours each semester. The number of office hours for President and Vice President shall be set by the Manual of Operating Policies and Procedures. The number of office hours for Secretary, Treasurer, and Parliamentarian shall be set by the Chief Student Affairs Officer. Duties of the Executive Board. A. To set the agenda for SGA General Assembly meetings. B. Sit on the Senate General Assembly as ex officio members and attend all Executive and Senate meetings. C. Take primary responsibility for the coordination, implementation, and evaluation of all SGA activities, programs, and services. D. To set the official SGA calendar, including the list of mandatory events, no later than the first day of scheduled classes for the semester. This calendar may be later amended per the SGA absence policy. E. To set the SGA absence policy by the first day of scheduled classes for the semester. F. To set the SGA dress code policy by the first day of scheduled classes for the semester. G. To set the SGA expectations policy by the first day of scheduled classes for the semester. H. Every officer shall allow the SGA advisors or advisor or their authorized representative to verify their eligibility to hold office every semester in accordance with the Article 1 of this Constitution. I, to dispose of SGA property and determine the use of assigned SGA space provided that these are consistent with appropriate university policies and procedures. J, the Executive Board shall serve as an interim General Assembly between the last day of spring finals and the first day of regularly scheduled fall classes. The Executive Board shall notify the General Assembly members of any decision rendered under this subsection by the first day of regularly scheduled fall classes. Any decision rendered by the interim General Assembly under this subsection is subject to General Assembly review. This review must occur within 2 regularly scheduled General Assembly meetings from the beginning of the fall semester. This subsection is direct exception to Article 3, Section 3.11.g of this Constitution. The President. The President must be elected by members of the student body in accordance with Article 2 of the SGA Bylaws. Duties of the President. To faithfully execute all acts of the Assembly. With advice of the Executive Board, nominate or appoint as appropriate students to serve on university committees and boards, to identify potential senators for appointment, to vacate positions in accordance with Article 3, Section 3.11.e of this Constitution. They will have power to establish ad hoc meetings and shall appoint the members of such committee. To serve as an official voice of the SGA, making information on the state of the university and the SGA readily available. They will sit on the Senate as an ex officio member without vote and be impartial towards motions and student opinions brought forth before the SGA. To serve as a supervisor and advisor to the Vice President, Secretary, Treasurer, and Parliamentarian. The President may convene the Assembly of the Student Government by giving notice to all SGA members at least 48 hours prior to the special session. Any use of this clause shall automatically be considered a mandatory event. Absences shall be assessed in accordance with the SGA absence policy. Preside over all SGA General Assembly meetings. The President shall execute and enforce all decisions rendered by the Student Judicial Board. The President will also exercise the option of voting in case of a tie during the General Assembly meeting. This is a direct exception of Article 2, Section 2.22.e of this Constitution. The Vice President. The Vice President must be elected by members of the student body in accordance with Article 2 of the SGA Bylaws. The duties of the Vice President. To assist the President in the execution of their duties. To perform the duties of the President in the case of absence. To serve as a liaison to the Faculty Senate. With advice of the Executive Board, have the authority to assign SGA senators to a standing committee, and to oversee the planning and execution of all SGA events. Secretary. The Secretary must be elected by members of the student body in accordance with Article 2 of the SGA Bylaws. Duties of the Secretary. Maintain a record of all proceedings of the SGA. Post General Assembly meeting minutes no more than 48 hours after the adjournment of the meeting. Manage all SGA correspondence. Oversee and update the SGA website regularly to ensure all posted information and documents are up to date. Ensure the proper advertisement of all official SGA events and elections as they see fit. Maintain an accurate record of all senator and officer absences. With a notice of no less than 1 week, provide the Student Senate with a record of absences of all members. And lastly, assist the President and Vice President in the execution of their duties. Treasurer. The Treasurer must be elected by members of the student body in accordance with Article 2 of the SGA Bylaws. Duties of the Treasurer. To maintain the financial records of SGA. To make available of all university publications as defined by the Office of Marketing and Communications in the student newspaper and biannual financial report of the SGA no later than December 1st and April 30th each year. It shall include a complete record of all financial transactions of the SGA and any other information the SGA may designate. The treasurer will turn in a yearly budget plan for the following fiscal year to be designated Chief Student Affairs Officer and the SGA advisors by February 1st of each year. With a notice of no less than 1 week, provide the Student Senate with a copy of the most up-to-date versions of the SGA budget and financial report, and assist the President and Vice President in the execution of their duties. Parliamentarian. Parliamentarian must be elected by members of the student body in accordance with Article 2 of the SGA Bylaws. Duties of the parliamentarian. To render and enforce all decisions regarding parliamentary procedure in accordance with the most recent edition of Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised, except as otherwise noted in this Constitution. To ensure documentation related to parliamentary procedure is readily available to General Assembly members. To oversee all SGA elections, with the assistance of the Rules Committee. To ensure all SGA policies and documents are properly and professionally written and in compliance with the SGA Constitution and Bylaws. To maintain copies of all current SGA documents and make said documents available to the General Assembly, Executive Board, SGA Advisors, Judicial Board, and the student body of UT Tyler. To serve as a liaison to the Student Judicial Board. The parliamentarian shall be responsible for convening the Judicial Board to special session as necessary, and to assist the President and Vice President in the execution of their duties. Article 3, Legislative Branch. The functions of the Senate. The Student Senate shall be the primary legislative body of the SGA and shall have the primary authority for all fiscal affairs. The Student Senate shall A. Have the power to pass legislation for the benefit of the student body. B. Be the arbiter. Be the final arbiter of decisions of the standing committees. C. Have the power to remove any senator or officer in neglect of their duties by 2/3 vote. D. Be responsible for the proper and prudent distribution of the student government funds. The Assembly shall maintain funds for the distribution to student organizations, to student government agencies, and for special student government projects. The budget of the student government shall be approved by the Assembly. E. Vote any potential senator or judicial board commissioner identified by the president of the student government into office with a 2/3 vote. Undertake no formal action within a quorum present, which shall consist of 2/3 of the total seats currently filled. That was F. G. The Assembly shall have the power to convene itself by written request of 1/3 of the representatives to not convene itself by written requests of the 2/3 of the representatives. Meet throughout the fall and spring semesters on a day and time to be set by the Executive Board. That was H. I. Render and enforce all its decisions in accordance with the most recent edition of Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised except a contradicted in this Constitution. The legislative branch retains the right to determine the rules of its own proceedings. J. Elect officers not specified in this Constitution. And K. Have 1 vote during General Assembly meetings, excluding the President of the SGA, except as noted in Article 2, Section 2.26 of this Constitution. Responsibilities of Senators. A. Serve 1-year terms beginning May 1st and ending April 30th. Appointed senators shall serve the remainder of their term in which they are appointed. P. Attend and participate in all scheduled meetings, special sessions, and mandatory events as designated by the Executive Board. C. Serve on at least 1 standing committee in the SGA as well as at least 1 university committee. Acceptance to this policy may be made by a majority vote of the Executive Board. D. Regularly contact students, groups, and organizations from their respective constituencies. E. Meet twice a semester with the head of their respective constituencies. The Executive Board shall be responsible for setting the deadline for these meetings. F. Attend senator orientation unless the office is assumed after the orientation has occurred. Responsible reasonable efforts to orient senators appointed or elected after senator orientation shall be made. And G, every senator shall allow the SGA advisor or advisors to have authorized representative to verify their eligibility to hold office every semester in accordance with Article 1 of this Constitution. Article 4, Judicial Branch. The Judicial Review Board. The Judicial Review Board shall be composed of 5 commissioners charged with the interpreting of the Constitution, bylaws, and acts of the student government organization. Commissioners shall serve 2 academic year terms, with 2 commissioners being selected on even-numbered years and 3 commissioners being selected on odd-numbered years. Replacement commissioners may be appointed to fulfill the remainder of a former commissioner's term as needed. The Judicial Commission shall have original jurisdiction in all cases arising under this Constitution and bylaws. Commissioners must maintain the same eligibility requirements for holding an executive office as defined in the Article 1 of this Constitution. No person shall be a commissioner while also serving as an executive officer or senator of the SGA. Vacancies shall be filled as needed in accordance with Article 3, Section 3.11.f of the SGA Bylaws. No formal action shall be taken without a quorum present, which shall consist of all currently appointed commissioners. Responsibilities of the Judicial Review Board. The Judicial Board shall elect a chair within 1 meeting of achieving a full board. Any member of the SGA may petition the Judicial Review Board concerning the interpretation of this Constitution or the acts of the SGA. The Judicial Review Board shall decide by a simple majority of its members whether to hear a petition. If a petition is heard, a decision shall be rendered by simple majority. The Judicial Review Board shall establish its own rules of procedure and shall maintain a journal of proceedings. This journal shall remain with the current SGA advisors when not in use. Presiding Officer. The chair of the Judicial Board shall preside as executive officer and the voice of the members of that body for 1-year term. The chair of the Judicial Board shall convene all members at least once a month and during the fall and spring semesters and promptly respond to appeals. The chair shall be responsible for executing the responsibilities and privileges of the SGA Review Board. The chair shall, upon request and with the consent of the Judicial Board, provide accurate information regarding proceedings. All Judicial Board meetings shall be considered closed meetings as defined by the Roberts Rules of Order. Appeals Procedure. A decision of the Judicial Board may be appealed in writing to the Chief Student Affairs Officer within 10 business days of notification of the decision. The appeals shall be reviewed and a written decision given within 10 business days. If no resolution is reached, an appeal may be made by the President of the University. The decision of the President is a final appellate review. The appeals procedure is not available for election disputes. Judicial Board rulings on election disputes are final. Last article, Article 5. Ratification and Amendment. Any elected member of the SGA may propose amendments to this Constitution. A proposed amendment must remain on the table for 30 days, after which the elected members must vote on the proposed amendment. A proposed amendment is tabled immediately following its proposal. If 3/4 of the elected members of the SGA favor the amendment, it must be submitted to the student body for approval or disapproval. If 5% of the currently enrolled body petitions the SGA in writing to amend the Constitution, the student government shall call an election within 30 calendar days for consideration or said amendment. Ratification process. Amendments to this Constitution shall be effective after ratification by a 2/3 majority of students voting on said amendment in an election, after certification by the chairman of the Rules Committee that such amendments have been dutifully ratified, the Chief Student Affairs Officer, the President of the University, and the Executive Vice Chancellor after approval by the Board of Regents of the University of Texas System through its prescribed procedures. Such amendments shall be deemed a revision of this Constitution, and a permanent copy shall be kept in the office of the Chief Student Affairs Officer. No amendment or act of the SGA shall have retroactive application. Bylaw proposal and ratification. Any voting member of the General Assembly may present an amendment to the bylaws at a General Assembly meeting. The amendment must be submitted to the Executive Board at least 1 week prior to its presentation in a meeting. Following the motion to amend the bylaws, the motion is immediately tabled without discussion or persuasion until the following meeting. At the meeting following a motion to amend the bylaws, the proposed bill shall be open for discussion, at which point voting and non-voting members shall have the opportunity to voice their opinion. The bill shall then come to a vote, and shall require a 2/3 vote of the Senate to be ratified. If passed, the amendment shall be then submitted for further approval in accordance with Article 5, Section 5.21 of this Constitution. Thank you for listening to me during this speech of the Constitution. Hello, Senators. This will be the reading of the bylaws of the SGA. Article 1. Standing Committees. Identification. The standing committees of the Student Government Association shall be the Executive Board, the Student Life Committee, the Communications Committee, the Student Government Appropriations Committee, the Rules Committee, and those additional committees approved for the following guidelines in Article 1, Section 2 of these bylaws. Creation and dissolution. The creation of new standing committees must be approved by the Executive Board and then passed with a 2/3 vote by the General Assembly. Chairpersons of newly formed standing committees must be designated within the motion which creates the committee. By a 3/4 vote of the General Assembly, the decision of the Executive Board to deny the creation of a new standing committee may be overturned. The dissolution of a standing committee must be approved by the Executive Board and then passed with a 2/3 vote by the General Assembly. By a 3/4 vote of the General Assembly, the decision of the Executive Board to deny the dissolution of a standing committee may be overturned. Composition and dress attire. Each officer and senator shall serve on at least one standing SGA committee. Each of the standing committees shall be composed of at least 3 senators and may include additional members who do not hold offices in the SGA. Committees may include the graduate and undergraduate non-elected students. All SGA members will wear their designated business casual attire to all official meetings of the SGA, Student Senate, or sanctioned or sponsored events of SGA. An SGA-sponsored t-shirts will be worn for events deemed casual by the executive officers. Dress code excludes meetings of the SGA standing committees, caucus meetings, advisory council meetings, retreats, and office hours. Dress codes are as follows. Men, polo, button-down, and/or collared shirt, slacks with a belt. Shirt must be tucked in, dress shoes or boots. Blue jeans or shorts will be disallowed at General Assembly and/or sanctioned or sponsored events of SGA. Women, dress tops, skirts, dress pants, long dresses with flats or heels, sweatpants, leggings, long shirts, or shorts will be disallowed at General Assembly and/or sanctioned or sponsored events of SGA. For every 3 incidences of dress code not followed, the members shall be charged 1 absence for their official attendance record. Chairperson. The chairperson of each standing committee, unless otherwise designated in these bylaws, the SGA Constitution, or the original motion which establishes the committee, shall be the Executive Board member as identified below. Executive Board Chair shall be the President. Student Life Committee Chair shall be the Vice President. Communications Committee Chair shall be the Secretary. SGAC Chair shall be the Treasurer. Rules Committee Chair shall be the Parliamentarian. The chairperson of each standing committee has the right to appoint any additional members who do not hold an elective office in the SGA to their respective committee. Committee responsibilities. The Executive Board shall create and administer the agenda for the General Assembly meetings and meet with the advisors to conduct business for the betterment of the SGA as a whole. The Executive Board shall designate as well as post in writing the representatives for the University of Texas System Student Advisory Council by the date set by the University of Texas System. Further, it shall also set in the writing the attendance policy for the General Assembly in accordance with the SGA Constitution. Notice of additions for the agenda must be made 24 hours in advance to the President. The Student Life Committee shall be responsible for coordinating all SGA activities. The Communications Committee shall be responsible for all communications between the elected members of the SGA and the student body. It shall also serve as a means of communication between the SGA and members of the faculty, staff, and campus media. It shall maintain and update any SGA websites. It shall design and post flyers and advertise SGA events. It shall take and maintain pictures at all SGA events. The SGAC shall make recommendations concerning the preparation of the SGA budget and the allocation of SGAC funds according to the SGAC policy. Each candidate may select one representative to assist the advisors and Rules Committee in overseeing the election process during the 2 days of the election as defined in Article 2, Section 10, Part B of these bylaws. The candidate representative must be named on the candidate form at the time of submission and may not be a current elected SGA member or be running for a position. Notice of election to students. Notice of a scheduled election shall be given to enrolled students no less than 4 weeks prior to the election. Announcement of the election must be made in student publications, flyers posted on general university bulletin boards in housing divisions, and the SGA website. In addition, any other method deemed appropriate by the Rules Committee must be used. Rules of campaigning. Candidates must follow all published University and the University of Texas System rules and regulations, manual policies and procedures, and Regents rules regarding solicitation and university uses. Campaigning and soliciting may not occur within a radius from the election polls to be determined by the Rules Committee on the date of elections. The Parliamentarian and/or Rules Committee shall ensure that all candidates abide by the rules and regulations. No campaign material or activity may impede either pedestrian or vehicular traffic. All candidates and their representatives are responsible for individual actions taken during the course of a campaign. In addition to platform statements, candidates are allowed to advertise their candidacy in any student publication so long as they adhere to the rules set forth by that publication. Wearing campaign material on the person and/or personal belongings is acceptable. However, campaign materials may not be worn on the person or personal belongings within a polling area. Distribution of handbills is acceptable only if done on a person-to-person basis. Handbills may not be placed on vehicles and/or in mailboxes. Handbills may be made of typing paper and must be 8.5 by 11 or smaller. Posters are described as anything else, size, shape, length, material, etc. They may be of poster board or wood and must conform to the guidelines of the Manual of Policies and Procedures. All campaign material must conform to Article 2, Section 5, Part B of these bylaws. No loudspeakers, noisemakers, or anything that might disturb any class shall be permitted at any time. Article 2. Election Code of the Student Government Association. Positions to be filled. The Executive Board shall be composed of the following: President, Vice President, Secretary, Treasurer, and Parliamentarian. Senators shall be elected based on their membership in one of the following student categories: 3 from each college of the University of Texas at Tyler, 2 from each official student housing complex, 5 from the freshman class of the student body, 2 from the graduate class, and 2 from each official University of Texas at Tyler satellite campuses. Creation and dissolution of officer positions not specified in the Constitution. In accordance with Article 3, Section 3.2, subsection K of the SGA Constitution, the Assembly is empowered to elect officers not specified within the SGA Constitution. Officers not specified in the Constitution may not serve as part of the Executive Board unless the Constitution is amended to add them to the Executive Board in accordance with Article 5, Sections 5.1 and 5.2. Officer positions not specified in the SGA Constitution are to be created and dissolved as follows. 1. The creation of new officer positions not specified in the Constitution must be approved by the Executive Board and then passed with a 2/3 vote by the General Assembly. Any motion to create a new officer position not specified in the Constitution must establish the powers and responsibilities of the position within the motion itself. 2. The dissolution of an officer position not specified in the Constitution must be approved by the Executive Board and then passed with a 2/3 vote by the General Assembly. Positions which are created with a specified lifetime are dissolved automatically according to the motion which created them. Requirements for candidates. To be eligible for election to an elective office, a candidate must meet the criteria listed in the Article 1 of the SGA Constitution. In order to file for candidacy to represent any college, official student housing complex, official University of Texas at Tyler satellite campus, the freshman class, or the graduate class, a student must be a member of that constituency. Candidates may run for one position on an executive board and any senator position for which they are qualified in accordance with Article 2, Section 3, Part B of these bylaws. Candidates elected to more than one position must select a single position in which they serve within 24 hours of notification of the election results. Any position not selected by the candidate within the time period shall be filled by the candidate receiving the second highest number of votes for that position. Any candidate currently serving on the Rules Committee may not participate in the creation or alteration of legislation involving elections during the time period of elections. All candidates must attend a candidacy meeting sponsored by the Rules Committee in order to campaign officially. Filing for candidacy. There will be a 2-week period when classes are in session in which applications for candidacy shall be accepted. Application forms must at a minimum be available from the SGA offices, the Department of Student Life and Leadership, and all official UT Tyler satellite campuses. Applications may be available at additional locations at the discretion of the Rules Committee. No candidate must be involved in collecting candidacy forms. Completed application forms are to be returned no later than 5 p.m. to the SGA office or the SGA advisor's office on the filing date. The SGA advisors shall determine the eligibility of prospective candidates to run for office in accordance with Article 1 of the SGA Constitution. Information related to elections such as candidate requirements and campaign rules shall be submitted in writing for each candidate at the mandatory candidacy meeting scheduled by the Rules Committee. The candidacy meeting shall be held 2 weeks prior to the first day of elections. Campaigning may begin at the end of candidacy meeting and may continue until polls are closed on the last evening of elections. It is the responsibility of candidates and majoring scheduling conflicts which would prevent attendance of the candidacy meeting to schedule a meeting with the parliamentarian. These meetings must occur within 1 calendar week of the candidacy meeting. Candidates who schedule an alternate meeting after the official date may not campaign until their meeting is complete. A deadline for arranging these meetings may be set at the discretion of the parliamentarian. Persons wishing to campaign on an official matter as write-in candidates must also attend a candidacy meeting. Each candidate may select one representative to assist the advisors and the Rules Committee in overseeing the election process during the 2 days of the election as defined in Article 2, Section 5. I've already read this page. I have an extra page. Fair enough. Alright, candidates may post posters within buildings only on official posting sites as determined by the Department of the Student Life and Leadership. Each candidate may display no more than one poster per official posting site. The Department of the Student Life and Leadership must approve, stamp, and be given a copy of all campaign materials. No campaign material shall be placed on trees. Writing on sidewalks or on non-approved surfaces shall be permitted. Persons voting shall not be allowed to display any type of material containing a candidate's name within the polling area. Students and voter workers in the voting area shall not verbally persuade or coach voters, but may advertise on voting procedure. All campaign materials shall be removed from designated posting locations within 1 calendar week of the close of elections. Voting stations and ballots. No candidate or representative shall work the voting stations during the election. No candidate shall participate in or be present for the counting of the ballots. The ballots will list each position with the candidates' names printed in ascending alphabetical order. At the close of the polls on the last day of voting, the ballots shall be counted. Each candidate representative may be present or observe the counting process. Official election results shall be posted in SGA designated areas by 12 p.m. noon on the day following the final voting day unless a complaint is filed. Voting dates and locations. The Department of Student Life and Leadership, Rules Committee, SGA advisors, and parliamentarians shall announce voting dates biannually. Any changes to these dates must be presented 30 days prior to the election. The voting locations shall be at the discretion of the Department of Student Life and Leadership, Rules Committee, SGA advisors, and the Executive Board. The voting locations shall be at the discretion of the Rules Committee may select eligible members of the student body, staff, and/or faculty to help in the election process as needed, in accordance with Article 2, Section 7, Parts A and B of these bylaws. Elected SGA members shall be sworn in accordance with Article 2, Section 2.1, Part 2.13 of the SGA Constitution. Votes and voters. All members of the student body shall be allowed one vote for each officer position. Students may vote for any senatorial seat in which they are a member of the representative constituency. Students shall be allowed a number of votes equal to the number of seats currently open. Financial disclosures. Candidates are required to keep accurate records of all campaign expenditures and donations received. Receipts must be maintained for all money expended and for all professional services rendered. This does not include labor from a volunteer staff. Donated items shall be reported at market value. The financial record must also show the amount and purpose of all expenditures, as well as the purpose of all donated items and funds, and the name of the person, group, or organization that donated such said items or funds. The financial records are to be submitted in writing to the SGA advisors by 5 p.m. on the last day of elections. The Rules Committee reserves the right to release financial information regarding the candidate expenditures and/or donations to the public. The value of mechanically reproduced copies shall be assessed at the candidacy meeting. This value shall be applied with no receipt available. Candidates must supply their own campaign materials and are not permitted to use university-funded supplies except printing from any lab for which the candidate has paid an access fee. All candidates are limited to $500 total in campaign expenditures regardless of the number of seats for which they are running. No candidate or authorized agent shall knowingly falsify any entry on the receipt, or his or her financial records shall be associated with the campaign. All candidates sharing benefits of joint receipts or expenditures shall declare them in the receipts and financial disclosures. No candidate shall claim any financial endorsement from any group or organization without first submitting to the Rules Committee a written statement from which such group or organization. This endorsement must then be reflected in all financial records for the candidate. Election disputes. If the candidate receiving the highest number of votes forfeits a position prior to being sworn in, then the candidate with the second highest number shall fill the position. The role of the candidate representative is to observe the campaigning, voting, and counting of votes. If any irregularities happen, this person is to notify the candidate, so the candidate may alert the SGA parliamentarian. The parliamentarian shall then be responsible for convening the judicial board to hear the issue. Representatives are not allowed to resolve or become involved in the issue directly. However, they provide information to the judicial board if a complaint is filed. Any complaint related to either a candidate's campaign, or the election process must be submitted in writing to the judicial board within 24 hours of the alleged violation, but no later than 11 a.m. on the day following elections. The judicial board shall review the complaint, make a decision, and take the appropriate corrective measures. This could include the removal of campaign material, removal of a candidate from election or being sworn in, or referring the student through the judicial board's prescribed disciplinary process. The judicial board's decisions are final. The SGA president, parliamentarian, and advisor must be present when the ballots are being counted. The candidate representatives must also be present. SGA senators and officers, with the exception of current candidates, are permitted to help in the ballot counting. 3 different SGA or Judicial Board members shall separately count each ballot once. Resulting in 3 complete ballot counts. If the ballot counts do not match, the SGA or Judicial Board members shall recount the ballots until their counts match. If the number of votes cast and the number of voters are inconsistent, the Rules Committee shall decide if a runoff election shall be held based on whether or not the outcome of the elections would change. Special elections. If an open senator position is contested, the candidates shall have the opportunity to campaign to the General Assembly. After the candidates have spoken, they shall leave the room, and the General Assembly shall vote on who shall fill the open position. In accordance with Article 4, Section C of the Bylaws, any vacated officer position that is not filled through succession shall be filled through a special internal election. This process shall begin directly following the first regularly scheduled General Assembly meeting following the office becoming vacant. The open position shall be run in accordance with all SGA policies except for Sections 4, 5, and 10 of the SGA Election Code. Notice of the scheduled special internal election shall be given to the enrolled students at least 1 calendar week prior to the election. Nominations for the ballot shall be taken from current SGA senators and officers at the regularly scheduled General Assembly meeting. During this 1 calendar week interlude, the SGA advisor or advisors shall verify the eligibility of all candidates nominated to the special election ballot. Candidates shall be given time to speak during the next regularly scheduled General Assembly meeting following nominations. After the candidates have spoken, they shall leave the room and the General Assembly shall discuss and vote upon the matter. During the meeting in which the candidates speak, the General Assembly shall vote by secret ballot. The candidate that receives the greatest number of votes shall fill the open office. In the case of a tied vote, another secret ballot shall be run, including only the tied individuals. Should the regularly scheduled elections result in a tie for an open seat, the following shall be the process for a runoff election. This process shall take place during the first regularly scheduled General Assembly meeting following the close of elections. Notice of a scheduled runoff election shall be given to enrolled students at least 1 calendar week prior to the election. The runoff election must be held 2 weeks after the counting of the ballots. Campaigning for the contested positions may be immediately following the official announcement of election results. The tied positions shall be run in accordance with all SGA policies, except for Sections 4, 5, and 10 of SGA Election Code. A runoff election may not be held if the tied parties have received less than 3 votes. Should a runoff election not be held, any candidates may request to speak with the General Assembly in accordance with Article 2, Section 13, subsection A of these bylaws. Substitutions. If the SGA president or parliamentarian are running for an office, another officer must substitute for their duties as appropriate. By a 3/4 vote, the General Assembly may enable 2 currently elected officers to perform the duties of the parliamentarian or president in collaboration. The officers must perform all duties jointly. Article 3. Student Government Appropriations Committee. The SGAC policy required revisions schedule. The SGAC policy must be reviewed by the Student Government Appropriations Committee during the fall of every even-numbered school year. The SGAC policy shall be amended as follows. Any elected member of the General Assembly may present a motion to have the SGAC review the SGAC policy before a quorum of the General Assembly. The proposed motion shall be open for discussion, at which point voting and non-voting members shall have the opportunity to voice their opinions. The motion shall come to a vote upon the closure of discussion and shall require a 2/3 vote of all elected members. Following the passing of the motion to review the SGAC policy, the SGAC shall be allowed to present their findings. Should the SGAC find that the intermediate amendment must be made, a member of the General Assembly may make a motion to amend the SGAC policy before a quorum of the General Assembly. The proposed amendment shall be open for discussion, at which point voting and non-voting members shall have the opportunity to voice their opinions. The motion shall come to a vote upon the closure of discussion and shall require a 3/4 vote of all elected members. The ratified policy shall come into effect at the beginning of the next fall or spring semester as stated in the initial motion. By a 3/4 vote of the President, elected members, any amendment to the SGAC policy may be brought into effect immediately if no SGAC funds have been distributed during the current semester. By a unanimous vote of the present elected members, any amendment to the SGAC policy may be brought into effect immediately. Article 4, Presidential Review and Senator Reform. A member may be called to presidential review by the written request of 1/3 of the filled Senate seats, the written request of the member's committee chair, or the written request of 15 other constituents. During the presidential review, the president of the SGA shall meet with the officer or senator in position. The officer or senator may request the presence of the SGA advisors. This meeting must be scheduled within 2 calendar weeks of receiving the aforementioned written request. The meeting may occur at any point, but must be scheduled within the time limit as per Article 4, subsection A of these bylaws. Following the presidential review meeting, the President may assign any of the following reforms. The officer or senator shall be required to host a student voice report table for up to 3 hours in an area that is easily accessible to members of their constituency. The officer or senator shall be required to speak to a number of currently registered student organizations and/or classes as determined by the SGA President. The President may elect to or not implement a reform. If an officer or senator has been reviewed more than 3 times in a semester in which the President implemented a reform other than Article 4, subsection 3, subsection D, the President shall be given the authority to remove the officer or senator in question from office. Following the review, the President must report the outcome of the meeting, including the reform implemented to the General Assembly at the next regularly scheduled General Assembly meeting. Any officer or senator shall be automatically placed under review if they do not present a student voice report or the General Assembly in 4 calendar weeks, they miss 2 consecutive General Assembly meetings, they miss 2 consecutive required non-General Assembly meetings, or miss 4 total non-General Assembly meeting events, or if they miss a special session. Appeals. The decision of the President may be appealed through the following process. Within 2 elected board meetings of the presidential decision being rendered, the officer or senator in question must inform the executive board of their intent to appeal the instituted reform. Within 2 General Assembly meetings of the presidential decision being rendered, the officer or senator in question may appeal to the General Assembly during the Speaker's podium. By a 2/3 vote, the General Assembly may repeal any reform set forth by the President. By a 2/3 vote, the General Assembly may substitute any reform set forth by the President with another form, Article 4, Section 3 of these bylaws. Last article, Article 5, Succession of Officers. The order of succession within the Executive Board shall be as follows: President, Vice President, Secretary, Treasurer, and Parliamentarian. According to the order of succession, each individual within the Executive Board beneath the vacant office shall have the opinion to fill the vacancy. If an officer position is vacated and not filled through succession, a special election within the General Assembly shall be held to fill the vacancy. The special election shall be held in accordance with Article 2, Section 12, subsection C of these bylaws. Thank you for listening to me as I did this horribly awful speech. Oh, I need to stretch and relax. Thanks, guys. Take care.